Hello, grade 9. Today I will explain the respiratory system. In this chapter, we will learn about the functions of the respiratory system, about the organs of the human respiratory system, about the pulmonary ventilation, the two phases, inhalation and exhalation, about the gas exchange at the level of both lungs and tissues, about the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide, and about the constituents of blood. Let's start with the functions of the respiratory system. The respiratory system has two main functions. The first one is that the respiratory system allows to move oxygen into body tissues where it is needed for cellular respiration. Another function is to remove carbon dioxide from body cells, which is a waste product of cellular respiration. So, the respiratory system has two main functions. The first one is to provide the body cells with oxygen, which is needed for cellular respiration. And the second one is to remove carbon dioxide molecules from these body cells, where these carbon dioxide molecules are produced by cellular respiration. What about the human respiratory system and the pathway of air? In this picture, you can see the parts of the human respiratory system. Let's begin with the nose. When the air enters into the nose, it moves into the nasal cavities. Then, from the nasal cavities, it then moves downwards into the pharynx, where this pharynx is common for food and air. From the pharynx, it then moves into the larynx, which is also known as voice box. The top of the larynx contains an epiglottis, which play an important role in closing the larynx when we are eating to allow the food to pass into the esophagus, and in closing the esophagus when we are breathing to allow the air to enter into the larynx. Then this air found in the larynx will move into the trachea. At the bottom of the trachea, there are two main branches, which are known as two bronchi. Each one of them is called the bronchus. The bronchus enters into the lung. So each bronchus will enter into one lung. We have two lungs. Inside the lung, it then branches into fine tubes called the bronchioles. These bronchioles then end up into tiny air sacs containing the air, which are known as alveoli, and these alveoli are surrounded by blood capillaries and represent the site of gas exchange. So we have two lungs, the right and the left lung, and there is the diaphragm that separate the organs of the respiratory system from the abdominal organs. So again, the parts of the human respiratory system are the nose, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, the two bronchi, the bronchioles, the air sacs known as alveolar sacs or alveoli. We have two lungs. The left lung consists of two lobes. The right lung consists of three lobes. Each lung is surrounded by a pleural membrane. Both are protected by a rib cage consisting of ribs, and there are intercostal muscles between the ribs. Let's watch a short video to understand more the parts of the human respiratory system.
In humans, the main organs responsible for respiration are present in the thoracic cavity. In the thorax region, the rib cage and a dome-shaped fibrous tissue, known as the diaphragm, are observed. Present within the rib cage are the pleural membranes, which enclose the lungs. The right lung is divided into three lobes: the right superior, right middle, and the right inferior lobe. The left lung is smaller and has only two lobes, the left superior and the left inferior lobe. Both the lungs are associated externally with small tubular bronchi, which unite and extend into the trachea. The trachea has incomplete C-shaped rings of cartilage, which prevent the tracheal wall from collapsing. The trachea leads into the pharynx, which is connected to the nostrils. As we breathe in air, the oxygen molecules enter the nostrils and travel downwards through the pharynx and trachea to finally reach the bronchi. From each bronchus, oxygen travels into the lungs. Within the lungs, the bronchus divides repeatedly to form bronchioles. Oxygen travels through these bronchioles and reaches the alveoli, each of which is surrounded by a network of capillaries.
Now, let's start with pulmonary ventilation. What are the phases of pulmonary ventilation, which means breathing? Ventilation or breathing consists of inhalation, known as inspiration, exhalation, known as expiration. Let's begin with inhalation. During inhalation, air enters into the lungs, so the volume of the lungs will then increase. The rib cage moves upward. The intercostal muscles found between the ribs will contract, and the diaphragm moves downward. So again, here is the inhaled air that enters into the lungs, so the volume of the lungs will increase. The rib cage is moved then upward. The intercostal muscles between the ribs will contract, and the diaphragm is then contracts and is pushed downward. What happens during exhalation? During exhalation, air leaves the lungs, so the volume of the lungs decreases. The rib cage moves downward, so the intercostal muscles will relax, and the diaphragm moves upward. So again, the air is exhaled, the volume is then decreased at the level of the lungs, the rib cage is moved downwards, the intercostal muscles between the ribs are then relaxed, and the diaphragm also relaxes and is folded upwards. What about the gas exchange at the level of the lungs? The aim at the level of the lungs to enrich blood with oxygen and to remove carbon dioxide from the blood. So at the level of the lung, the aim is to provide oxygen to the blood and to remove carbon dioxide from the blood, where this carbon dioxide is then exhaled. In this case, the air entering the lungs contains more oxygen and less carbon dioxide compared to the blood in the pulmonary capillaries. So, these gases diffuse from the medium of high pressure to the medium of low pressure. This means that the air that is found in the alveoli is rich in oxygen and poor in carbon dioxide. But the blood found in the blood capillaries around the alveoli is poor in oxygen and rich in carbon dioxide. So diffusion will then occur from the medium of high pressure to the medium of low pressure. So oxygen will then diffuse from the alveoli into the blood. In contrast, carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood capillaries into the alveoli. So oxygen diffuses from the medium of high pressure to the medium of low pressure. That is, oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood, and carbon dioxide diffuses from the medium of high pressure, which is the blood in this case, to the medium of low pressure, which are the alveoli. Here is a picture about the alveoli, which shows a sectioning of the alveoli. These are the small pockets containing the air, rich in oxygen and poor in carbon dioxide. Here are the blood capillaries, which contain the blood rich in carbon dioxide and poor in oxygen. So oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood capillaries, and carbon dioxide diffuse from the blood capillaries into the alveoli. So from the medium of high pressure of carbon dioxide to the medium of low pressure of carbon dioxide, and oxygen diffuse from the medium of high pressure of oxygen to the medium of low pressure of oxygen. When the blood becomes oxygenated, its color then becomes bright red. Here is another document which shows that the air moves in and out of the alveolus. The blood found in the capillary around the alveolus. This blood is rich in carbon dioxide, which diffuses from the medium of high pressure to the medium of low pressure, that is from the blood into the alveolar sac. And the air here in the alveolus is rich in oxygen, and the blood in the capillary is poor in oxygen. So oxygen diffuses from the alveolus into the blood capillaries from the medium of high pressure to the medium of low pressure. Thus, the blood that enters the lung is poor in oxygen and rich in carbon dioxide, while the blood that leaves the lungs is poor in carbon dioxide and rich in oxygen, in order to transport this oxygen to all parts of the body.
A section of one alveolus shows the presence of numerous alveolar chambers with pores. Blood containing RBCs is seen flowing through the capillaries. The oxygen molecules from the alveolus diffuse into the capillary and then get absorbed by the bluish-purple RBCs. This causes oxygenation of the RBCs, and a transition in their color from bluish-purple to red is observed. The blood moving into the alveolus contains RBCs and carbon dioxide molecules. These molecules are released into the alveolus. The carbon dioxide collects in the alveolar chamber. And then from the alveolus, it travels through the bronchioles into the bronchus, which finally reaches the trachea, and is breathed out through the nostrils.
The gas exchange at the level of the cells. Here, the aim is to enrich body cells with oxygen and to remove the carbon dioxide from these cells. So the aim at the level of the body cells is to provide these cells with oxygen and to remove carbon dioxide. In this case, the cells use up oxygen during cellular respiration. So the level of oxygen gas in these cells is lower than in the blood. Therefore, oxygen diffuses from the blood into the cells. In contrast, the cells produce carbon dioxide during cellular respiration, so the level of carbon dioxide in the cells is higher than in the blood. Therefore, carbon dioxide diffuses from the cells into the blood. This means that at the level of the body cells, the blood is rich in oxygen, while the cells are poor in oxygen because it was used up during cellular respiration, so oxygen will diffuse from the blood into the body cells. In contrast, the body cells are rich in carbon dioxide, which is produced by cellular respiration, while the blood is poor in carbon dioxide, so carbon dioxide diffuses from the body cells into the blood capillaries. Oxygen diffuses from the blood into the cells, and carbon dioxide diffuses from the cells into the blood. Now, let's explain the transport of gases. How is oxygen transported? At the level of the lungs, oxygen that diffuses into the bloodstream binds to hemoglobin, forming oxyhemoglobin. As you can see in this figure, the oxygen molecules here inside the lungs, inside the alveoli of the two lungs, diffuse into the capillaries inside the blood and bind to the hemoglobin molecules which are found inside the red blood cells, forming oxyhemoglobin. Then, at the level of the body cells, when reaching the body cells, this oxyhemoglobin decomposes into oxygen and hemoglobin in order to release the oxygen molecules, so the oxygen will then diffuse from the capillaries into the body cells. So, at the level of the tissues, oxyhemoglobin decomposes to release oxygen, which then diffuses into the tissues. In this case, we should know that 98.5% of O2 are transported by hemoglobin in the form of oxyhemoglobin. However, 1.5% of O2 are dissolved in the plasma. What about the transport of carbon dioxide? At the level of the tissues, carbon dioxide diffuses from the cells into the bloodstream to be transported to the lungs. This means that at the level of the body cells, there is a high level of carbon dioxide, which allows the diffusion of carbon dioxide into the bloodstream in order to be transported to the lungs and to be exhaled. In this case, we should know that there are three ways for the transport of carbon dioxide. Some carbon dioxide, 20 to 30%, can bind to hemoglobin molecules to be transported in the form of carbohemoglobin. However, 7 to 10% of carbon dioxide can dissolve in the plasma, and about 70% are also dissolved in the plasma, but in the form of bicarbonate ions, the HCO3-. When reaching the lungs, carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the alveoli, and these carbon dioxide are then exhaled. As you can see in this figure, carbon dioxide that are found in the body cells will diffuse into the blood capillaries. Then they are transported in three forms, either dissolved in the plasma, or in the form of bicarbonate, or bound to hemoglobin, where they bind to the hemoglobin molecules found inside the red blood cell, forming carbohemoglobin. When reaching the lungs, the carbon dioxide will diffuse from the capillaries into the alveoli. The ones that were bound to the hemoglobin forming carbohemoglobin, in this case the carbohemoglobin decomposes and releases the carbon dioxide into the alveoli. So, the carbohemoglobin decomposes into hemoglobin and carbon dioxide to allow the release of carbon dioxide inside the alveoli. Now let's talk about the blood. First, we should know that the blood has two colors, either a bright red color or a dark red color. If the blood is rich in oxygen, its color is bright red. If the blood is rich in carbon dioxide, its color is dark red. What is ammonium oxalate? Ammonium oxalate is added to blood in order to prevent its coagulation outside the blood vessels. This means that outside the blood vessels, the blood will coagulate, so we add ammonium oxalate in order to prevent this coagulation. This is usually used when we are making centrifugation. What is centrifugation? It is the separation of the constituents of blood by rapid rotation. So we are making rapid rotation in order to separate the constituents of blood. At the end of centrifugation, we will obtain that the blood is composed of 54% of plasma and 46% of blood cells, where 1% are the white blood cells called leukocytes and the platelets, and 45% are the red blood cells, which are known as erythrocytes. In this document, you can see how centrifugation is performed. First, the blood is extracted. Then, rapid rotation is done, known as centrifugation. After that, the blood shows two phases. The light phase, which corresponds to the plasma, and the heavy phase, which corresponds to the blood cells. Let's make a review about the role of the different blood cells. The white blood cells play an important role in providing immunity to our body, that is, in fighting antigens. The red blood cells play an important role in the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. These red blood cells are disc-shaped, they have no nucleus, and they contain hemoglobin. What is hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is a red-colored protein which is rich in iron and bind in a reversible manner to oxygen and carbon dioxide, which means that it can bind carbon dioxide and releases carbon dioxide. It can bind oxygen and releases oxygen. This is called binding in reversible manner. The platelets play an important role in blood clotting. Now, let's talk about the adaptation of the lungs to gas exchange. That is, how are the two lungs adapted for the gas exchange? These two lungs are characterized by, first, they have large number of alveoli, which increases the surface area of exchange. This means that the lungs have a large number of alveoli, and this large number of alveoli helps in increasing the surface area of gas exchange. Second, the richness in blood vessels. This means that the lungs are richly vascularized, where each alveolus is surrounded by numerous blood capillaries. Third, the thin walls of alveoli and blood capillaries, which make the passage of gases easier and faster. This means that both the alveoli and the blood capillaries, they have thin walls, which helps in the passage of the gases and makes it easier and faster.